Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Navvai Shift, the show where we speak with founders and change makers shaping the future of business, technology, and growth. Today's guest is Sumit Shekhar, a product executive and an AI architect with deep experience leading large-scale AI and cloud infrastructure transformations at one of the world's largest financial institutions. Sumit, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Damari and Joshua.
No, perfect. It's a pleasure. So to get us started, can you tell us a bit more about your journey into AI, what first drew you into this space and what kept you here?
Absolutely. Thank you once more. I know it's a little bit late in the night for yourself and almost evening here on the East Coast. I've been building technology products for about 17 years now. Of those 17, I've lived in US for the last 15. And my work has spanned across supply chain data products, global cloud platforms, and AI inside heavily regulated businesses. Most recently, I've been with JP Morgan Chase, the global bellwether as far as financial services is concerned, most significant bank across the globe. And prior to that, I was with T-Mobile. And then prior to that, I was with e-commerce, retail, and some of the technology focused firms that are out there in US. So I've been an engineer who's been fixing broken pipelines at midnight, and then also the PM who's been pushing for adoption of skeptical rooms, and the executive assembling these teams across time zones to ship safely at scale. Notably, looking at JP Morgan Chase and T-Mobile experiences, they are a global firm which works 24 by 7. So therefore, it means that you have to be working across the time zones across the globe. I came into this field with curiosity. Each chapter has pushed me to leave with a new way of thinking. One of that is that trust is earned, speed comes from design, and then value only counts when it shows up in the numbers. When Gen AI is under the microscope, I'm here to share what it really took me to make AI stick.
No, that's amazing. I really appreciate the insight. And I'm also quite familiar with JP Morgan myself as my previous background. I used to have a career there myself. I have to ask him, was there a particular light bulb moment when you realized AI could move beyond experimentation and deliver measurable business impact?
Oh, sure. So from any type of looking at AI as cost center versus being a value driver, the learning that has been upfront is that AI earns its seat when it carries anything which is accountable and has a measurable outcome. From me, it has come to me as a curiosity, wherein when I asked why AI is keep getting labeled as R&D, curiosity left me with a new way of thinking, where I left with being committed to running AI like a product line with a benefit ledger and a budget. When I took responsibility of enterprise AI, the programs that were funded were mostly experiments. The business problem was very simple. Spend has had no dependable link to return, and so therefore adoption never broke out. I set a clear bar. Every initiative needed a result leaders could act on. Therefore, as an organization, we instrumented use cases that lose like apply loss reduction, cycle time cuts, and net revenue signals. And then therefore I wrote them into a benefit ledger with time window and owners. It was a fraud workload that reduced losses and translated into released reverse reserves with a transparent calculation. That perhaps shifted the room from, thinking about why spend in this area to actually looking at as where else can this be applied. To build this into a day-to-day discipline, I kind of shipped cost impact dashboards for every service, which is token, GPU minutes, storage egress, plus the business metrics that services moved. The first week in that arena brought uncomfortable calls, where are things like, are these numbers accurate or correct? And then shifted into focus. The teams that I worked with pruned low yield workloads and then doubled down on high yield ones, and then presented these portfolios like products. We also added some counterfactual reviews and then control cohorts so claims could survive scrutiny. I actually came in curious about language. leaving with practice. Therefore, treating AI like a product with unit economics, any type of verified impact, and a roadmap that earns its funding. So that was my way of looking at how could AI be a value driver from just being looked at as cost center in a heavily regulated environment.
Nice. No, that's a great take. So, what do you see as the biggest mindset shift when enterprises start treating artificial intelligence as a driver of business value rather than just a technology investment?
I think it's the repetition. The more you dabble with it, the more guardrails you develop around it, because the Gen AI today is very raw. It is going through cycles, which, if you are in the know, you would also understand that not everything can be trusted. But then the muscle that builds that trust is not the tool, but the people behind the tool and the number of cycles that you do to make that tool accessible to everybody. We have a phase at my previous company. It's about the purpose. The purpose is to build it for everyone, everywhere, every day. So I built with that purpose, and has been very helpful. You rally the executives around when you show that that value has been increasing. There are lots of conversations in the hallways, and people are echoing what you are doing, and then they are reaching out for you to take their journey forward.
Yeah, we tend to hear that quite a lot when we're speaking with developers. Build with purpose. So that kind of leads me on to my next question: is how do you measure ROI on an AI initiative, and how do you make the valuable visible to business and business leaders?
Um, it's very something that is not easy to think through. How do you build an ROI? But what you should be looking at is what are the key drivers that you need to be really looking into when you think about building the ROI framework, and it's more cost intensive early on, because for you to be looking at how do you drive the adoption and then from there lean into return on investment is a long journey. And it started with a thought process, with an idea that, hey, could we use AI to develop code that could help our software engineers down the line to do something that aids them in their software development process, and yet maintain the control in-house. And that idea spun into building generative experiments like, the LLM suite. I would think that in place, instead of right away looking at, okay, what would be a return on the investment that I'm making. In fact, early on, the investment is also not pretty much known, because you are experimenting with sort of ideas in some pods that are out there. So that would be my premise. But I would also kind of think through, at the simplest form, ROI is net gain on investment, right? So I would think that this is something that has lots of factors that I need to look into before I get into that cost benefit analysis or calculating the ROI. The first such thing that I would want to do is define the business problem first, in terms of any type of areas that we want to cover. For example, reducing a customer service handle time, or improving fraud detection, or perhaps looking at accelerating software development, or maybe looking at employee onboarding, or generating any type of content that may be reflective of our marketing efforts, or reaching out to outreach efforts that are out there. It starts with asking a question: what are we spending today, and how will Gen AI shift that curve? The second thing that I would be looking at is quantity benefits, that can be in terms of hard savings or any soft productivity gains. But essentially, both should be captured. In terms of cost savings, I would be looking at any type of reduction in manual hours, or any type of lower infrastructure or compute versus any legacy approaches that are out there. So basically, it is replacing something that has been in focus for a very long time. In this case, hundreds of years, right? So you should be looking at cost savings from that perspective, reduction in any type of compliance incidents, fraud losses and stuff like that. From a productivity standpoint, I would be looking at any type of faster cycle times or any type of increased velocity, and any ways in which I can look at more cases handled per agent or by analysts, right? So if we can increase or help in those productivity gains, then I would probably be looking at that as a benefit quantifier. Or the third area that I would be looking at would be in terms of revenue impact, wherein a generative AI could help going to master going, and then that can be implemented with each new product rollout that is out there. Higher conversion from any type of personalized content or unlocking any new customer segments. So from that perspective, I would move on to looking at quantifying the costs, because what I want to understand is what is the full cost to serve, not just the GPU bill that comes through our public cloud providers, right? So any direct cost or indirect cost that is supporting the cost structure, meaning obviously there is a compute cost, there's a GPU cost, perhaps there is an API cost that is out there. Along lumped with that is the network and storage cost or licensing fees that are out there, right? So, and then there is indirect cost in terms of how many times you are doing prompt engineering and what kind of prompt engineering you are doing, all types of fine tunings that are involved in that, evals that are involved in that. Governance is a big area from our perspective, compliance and risk review, right? And then supporting and monitoring activities that kind of goes through. So in all, I would think the ROI would be the annual benefit, reducing, taking out the annual cost, and then also like um, operating that at an annual cost basis. Like, so that would be a ROI for AI powered support bot that reduces any type of human agent time by 500,000 per years. Um, the average loaded cost for that is about $35 an hour, which is roughly about 17 or little bit more than that, $17 million saved. And then the platform cost is about roughly $4 million. So in this case, the ROI would be your average loaded cost minus the platform cost divided by the platform cost, which is 338%. If you take 17.5 minus 4 over 4, so that's 338%. So that's the kind of ROI that I'm looking at. But, as I was telling previously, it's hard to kind of get to that level early on, because when you introduce such technologies, there are more people who are takers and who want to kind of experiment those things a lot. And the companies have the ability to provide that level of comfort and cushion to the engineers, right? I hope that
Most
helps.
definitely. No, that definitely helps. Much appreciated for that insight for sure. And I think just touching on, I know as you kind of mentioned in regards to ROI, there's a lot of wide range to essentially measure it. Of course, it can be done on a revenue, but it can also be done on a cost saving in regards to the staff. But I kind of want to ask something. Where do you see enterprises struggling the most with implementing AI? Is it executive buy-in? Is it scaling beyond small pilots? Or is it kind of trying to move away from those legacy systems that are currently in place for the last 100 years?
Well, so Gen AI has improved the way in which we build traditional softwares, right? Today it's all about writing, vibe coding, if you are into those things. But then such experiments do not get to the point where they can be productionalized, because then comes the impact, and especially in regulated environments, the impact is that any such mistake that you make in production is going to lead you towards millions of dollars in financial losses that are out there. So you have to be really thinking through. It's the executive buy-in would come when you are able to repeat that cycle from prototypes to production and show the benefit, and yet at the same time maintain that the financial losses are not there. And it's going to take some time for us to kind of get to that point. We implemented something very simple, and we used, in the case of the financial services company where I was working, we brought in the OpenAI based licensing to build a wrapper around that, and built our own LLM on top of it. So that was the first experiment, but then that was currently rolled out to a pilot of a few 100,000 people. And then from there, it went out to about 300,000 people that work in that organization. So um, the first thing that we noticed was that there was adoption, and then from adoption came celebration, and from one person to a team to a larger organization and whatnot. I don't think that we have a lot of um, productionalized examples to think about whether there is adoption challenges or whatnot. And today, most folks are building these technologies by themselves, right? I mean, a lot of people are vibe coding today because they know that by doing this, they will be able to come to a position where they can deploy their ideas faster. But then they need to still cross the hurdle of going from a prototype to being something that is production grade and can be used in any such environment. That's where we need to be very cautious. So that would be my recommendation: to build faster, fail faster, and also maintain your ability to go to production by doing everything right, like building the technologies in a way in which they can be adopted by larger organizations or enterprises.
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. I agree. Something I have to ask: do you think AI platforms with revenue responsibilities will become the new norm across large enterprises?
I think it is slowly becoming that, because today, and if you notice the way in which larger organizations are identifying resources against the critical business services that these resources are supporting, I think the wave is towards building financially critical AI applications that can survive the test of that being productionized. So there is obviously that push towards AI heavy organizations, not AI first, because if you have a combination of legacy and newer applications, it's hard to leave away something that you've built over hundreds of years and jump into something which is AI driven. Because on the other side, where AI is today, it's hard to tell whether you could generate that much of enthusiasm and maintain that customer credibility. And everybody in the product management side or in the engineering side is worried about those, all the way from leaders all the way to the engineers, right? So today, so that's the kind of feedback that I have based on what I've seen. I think it's a little difficult to come to the position where your revenue can be benchmarked against the AI work that is happening within the organizations. But we are slowly getting there. And there's a push from both sides, whether it is the AI model companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatnot, or the adopters who are learning the ropes quite significantly every single day. I myself is investing a lot of time in doing that.
No, nice, nice, nice. So you've touched on outcomes and visibility, and from my understanding, that takes data that you actually can trust. A lot of people do talk about data. So when people do talk about data, like alternative data, it can sound quite abstract in practice. But what kinds of new data are enterprises actually using? What do you think are the most powerful?
Sure. I think there's a learning upfront with regards to usage of alternative data, and that is that advantage comes from upstream signals, which are made credible fast enough to act. Right. So when the pandemic started, the official indicators arrived very late, and decisions arrived pretty daily, right? So waiting meant that we are exposing ourselves. And at that time, I leaned into operations instincts and asked what has moved the upstream. We were able to wire cargo movements, supplier delays, and then also any type of payment flows into a clean pipeline. A shipping congestion spike appeared almost 2 weeks before broader reports did. At the time, I was with a telecom organization and dealing with the supply chain woes that were stopping us from achieving the outcomes that we wanted to achieve with regards to new models being showcased by companies like Apple, Samsung, and whatnot. So therefore, all of these things were something that, as a supply chain AI product leader, is something that is very close to what I inserted myself into. That window has led us to reposition and tighten the risk posture earlier than any of our peers in the telecom space. Discovery was the half of the job, and wherein credibility was the work. So we kind of built a column level lineage, back tested any type of quality checks that were out there, and also a short evidence memo for each data set was created, which had things like the source, refresh cadence, known biases, and then also the failure modes, as well as how to depreciate it safely. So these are the things that are required for somebody in the supply chain space to kind of look into. It's something that I just think through right now, that at that time, our nights went into reconciling schemas across different clouds and then also fixing broken jobs while we're all walking the governance through the documents. Not very glorious, but completely necessary when I look back at that situation. So, in my mind, what started as a race for speed also became a lesson in discipline, wherein the data earned the influence not because it was early, but because it was defensible. So that would be my learning from an alternative data leading towards an enterprise insight. I came in curious whether a non-traditional data could inform a real decision. But I left with the doctrine that upstream signals matter only when they stand up to an audit, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps for sure. Someone I have to ask, in highly regulated industries, what is the trick to making new data sources both compliant and also valuable?
You have to think through a lot of different things that make that data. Like, I think the first thing that you need to look at is the business problem. Raw enterprise data is messy. In most cases, it is sitting in a lot of silos that are out there. Some which are very legacy in nature and some which are probably modern. There may be duplication across data, so you have to look into that. All of these data also carries PII, or personally identifiable information, that crosses borders globally, right? And then often isn't a fit for use in AI systems. So in a regulated environment, that means two problems. There's a compliance risk, and then there's a lost opportunity if you lock away the data. And if you use that data in a raw form, I think it's gonna lead towards financial losses for the organization. So, in all honesty, the challenge isn't to just how do I clean the data, right? It is to how do I make the data both compliant and valuable at the same time. In my approach in building the trust pipelines, I think I break down into three moves. Number one will be classifying and protecting the data from a compliance first perspective. Number two will be tracing and documenting for auditability. And then the third area would be enriching and engineering to make it valuable. I can go into the details of each of those now. So from classifying and protecting the data from a compliance first perspective, I would be building any type of automated gates that are able to tag sensitive fields, for example, PII or PHI data or payment trade information. And then on top of it, I would be applying transformations in terms of masking, tokenization, any type of hashing or differential privacy that become part of this data classification. From a gate keeping perspective, the sensitive data does not have the way to leak outside. Then the third thing that I would apply would be policy as codes to check every data set as it flows, and then just do one-time audit of those of that data. The second area, as I was talking about, would be in terms of tracing and documentation for auditability, in terms of tracking the lineage, because every data set has a history, where it came from, how it was modified, and who basically touched that data through that entire process. And then the second area that I would be looking would be in terms of summarizing, explaining the sources, and then making assumptions and limitations to evidence the data and tracing that data. And then the third thing that I would be looking at would be any type of real-time for risk teams to actually do self-serve checks instead of waiting for engineers to come in and help them out. The third big area that we'd be looking at to make the data valuable would be enriching and engineering that data to actually stitch the fragmented feeds into unified schemas with regards to, say, payments or perhaps logistics or perhaps customer events. And then applying a feature engineering part to turn raw data into signals that the business cares about. So, business critical areas would be in terms of churn risk, likelihood fraud, situations that are out there, or maybe supply delays, and then creating reusable APIs or features so that multiple teams can build on the same trusted data product. So that would be the three large areas to build a trust pipeline. As far as the payoff is concerned, when I get this right, I think the data stops being a liability and starts being an asset. So that in reality, the compliance partners can sleep at night because lineage and protections are in place, right? So business leaders can act faster because insights come weeks through official reports, and then engineers build with confidence because they are not fighting any ad hoc approvals every time. So that would be my way of looking at making the data compliant and then also valuable. That
Nah,
makes
that's
sense.
amazing. Yeah, that definitely does make a lot of sense. And I really do appreciate the length of detail as well. Once the data flows, I think the plumbing decides what scales and what stalls. So in terms of infrastructure and of course what makes it to enterprise AI real, what is the difference between how having AI models and how they're actually able to deploy at an enterprise scale?
They are two different things. So I would think personal experiments at a smaller scale versus at an enterprise scale is very, very different. So I need to kind of think through what that really means, and then we can get into some of the nuances. So, for example, if the business problem is that models are easy, anyone can spin up an LLM on a laptop or maybe call an API. The hard part is enterprise. I was kind of leaning towards that, which is taking that model and making it safe, making it faster, making it cost effective, and then also trusting enough to run inside a business where failure has a real price. And in this case, it's the financial losses that we have to come through, or maybe it's a reputation loss as well. The difference between a model versus an enterprise deployment is that a model is probably trained on a fine-tuned or on some kind of data that is out there. It lives in isolation for most part, maybe in a research laboratory or a demo notebook. And then it also produces accuracy metrics, eval scores, and maybe a nice demo, right? But it is fragile in nature. If the input changes, or if something asks the wrong thing, it breaks. Whereas if you look at the enterprise deployment, the pipelines are not just models. They're all the things that we talked about: lineage, versioning, retraining, or maybe drift detection, right? So I would be kind of looking into those more intently. I would be also looking at what does it mean from a guardrail perspective. For example, content filters, policy as codes, red team prompts, or compliance scans. Some of these things are not even heard of when you think about somebody working off of their own LLM in their own silo, right? But then they become real when you move all of these things in an enterprise context. I would be also looking at the cost control factors, which are routing to fit the fit for purpose models, or any type of caching that you require, or any type of token budgets, because with every new model the token size is increasing, and therefore the budget to manage those token size is also increasing and depleting the overall budget that has been earmarked for the year for an enterprise. And then observability is a big thing for enterprise in terms of real-time dashboards, alerts, and audit logs, you name it. Then comes the layer of governance, wherein we have entities like our legal team, risk teams, and security teams, cybersecurity teams that are out there that are signing off on any one of these things that are out there. and it could not be planned as a last minute gig. It has to be baked in into the overall plan. So that means that, from literally building a LLM by yourself could be days job, could become months, weeks and months job when it comes to enterprises. And behind these, there are obviously conversations, um, identifying what is fit for purpose and stuff like that. Then I think comes the scale, wherein you're not building it for as a hobby project, but it is going to be used by thousands of analysts, a lot of customers that are using it, or perhaps any type of apps that are consuming results that are coming out of this LLMs simultaneously. So from my product lens, when I evaluate whether an AI system is enterprise ready, I ask if the models work. And then I also ask, can we deploy these use cases in hours, not weeks? Can we prove compliance before the regulators even ask it? Can we business measure the ROI in dollars saved, or perhaps revenue gained? Or can an engineer at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. maybe see the same dashboards the execs will see at 9 a.m.? Because that happens a lot, right? You don't have a lot of time to prepare for all of these questions. And if these answers are, if the answer to these questions are yes, then it's not just a model that is there anymore. It's a product that an enterprise can rely on. So those are the kind of things that I would be looking at from an enterprise standpoint. Sounds like there's a committee that is involved in doing all of this, but it's important when I'm looking at the vulnerability of the models. Like ChatGPT came recently, and it, you know bombarded. A lot of people have a lot of complaints about it, right? It's not that ChatGPT is the only thing that was the reason. I think they took away the prior models that were out there, and people were relying on those models for many different things. So, yeah.
Now, Summit, the context you're giving us today is absolutely crazy. Part of me is like, I don't even want to release this podcast because of the golden nuggets that you're delivering right now. But I mean, we did promise you a podcast, so we have to release it. But
There's more
from
to
your
come from where I'm from. So
we're here, we're indulging in it right now, as Damari would say, marinating the meat. But from your experience, what does a good AI infrastructure look like, and what are the non-negotiables?
I think the AI infrastructure should be built on something that you've been able to navigate yourself. There should be a hard factors that you cannot negotiate on. I would think more widely in terms of the business problem that I'm trying to solve. I think in enterprises, AI is not just judged for clever demos, but also looked into from whether it can be trusted when the stakes are very high. The reputation of the firm and the financial, legal, the overall game that the organization is trying to play with, being enterprise AI being in place, right? Money on the line, regulators watching what you are doing, teams relying on it day and night. To get there, you need some non-negotiables. And if any one of these are missing, then the system will eventually break trust. From my perspective, my non-negotiables are one, the compliance is the pipeline, meaning privacy, any type of PII scans, content safety, and then also looking at model evals. They should be able to run automatically by themselves. Looking at policy as codes should not be a manual checklist. Then I would also look at audit logs for every request that is out there. The second area that I would be looking at would be looking at observability from all different angles that are out there in terms of real-time dashboards, or which would probably be any type of latency that I'm looking at, any token spend, any error or drift in the LLM itself, right? Alerts that our engineers and risk teams both are able to understand. And then in every data set, every model version, there is a traceability, there is a lineage. If you cannot see it, you cannot trust it. That's the motto that observability is based on. The third area that I would be looking at would be in terms of cost transparency, cost to serve per request by team or by use cases, right? I'd be also looking at the budgets where alerts are provided before overruns are real on a day-to-day basis. And then optimization levers in terms of routing to smaller models, caching or retrieve. The fourth such area would be like thinking about the high resilience or the guardrails that are out there where any stop rules and engineers can invoke. Because it's a day-to-day thing when it comes to building enterprise AI. Delving into pre-mortems and then game days to practice any type of failure that may come in when you actually deploy it. Creating safe fallback paths if the model or infra is misbehaving or is drifting. And then the fifth area that we're looking at would be developer experience, like in terms of standardized templates, software development kits, or model registries. Any golden paths that our engineers are going to look at so that they don't reinvent infra, because their job is to use the infrastructure that has been provided, not to spend time on building that. And then self-service compliance and risk reviews, which happens a lot from an infrastructure standpoint. That's my day-to-day working with all types of compliance teams and risk teams to actually review that. Most cases are self-service, but obviously there are combinations of manual do-overs versus self-services. And then business outcomes would be looking some of the metrics that I feel is important, wherein I'd be looking at workloads that are tied to any type of measurable benefits with regards to hours that we are saving, risk reduction, or unlocking any type of revenue, any dashboards that can show cost and value side by side. So those are some of the levers that I'd be looking at. From an enterprise AI platform perspective, I think the objective is, if they live or die by their non-negotiables, the compliance is in the pipeline, observability everywhere, and then transparent costs, resilience under pressure, and then developer ease. So those are the clear nice to haves from my perspective. They are different between a demo and then a platform that the business can actually run on. So those are the things that I would be looking at to answer your question.
No, that's brilliant. Much appreciated for the insight, Summit. Summit, I have to ask, do you think the next leap will come from infrastructure innovation or from better ways of using what we already currently have?
I think the innovation is going to come. When I look at AI today, I look at AI in three different broad models or broad areas. One is people building products using AI, right? And second is AI infrastructure, and the third one is AI models. I think that the next leap is going to come from innovation gained from AI infrastructure, ways in which we can trim the cost of providing compute for the AI capability that we are building. The second big area would be AI models, and I think every day we are getting closer towards AGI. I think the question somebody posed is, are we in a position? How are we going to test whether we have AGI here or yet or not? What do we do for that? We need to be looking at the inherent capability of humans to understand what AGI brings to us, and then being in a position to identify where we can correlate with AGI, right? And it's more of a journey. I wouldn't say that one day we would have AGI and we would be able to claim it, but essentially the areas from where the innovation is going to come through is that. I think the third area where I was talking about with regards to building products on AI, it depends on the ability for people to kind of use what we have from an infrastructure and models perspective to build more robust AI features and products that people can use. So for you sitting in somewhere in the London area, I think you are interested in looking at, hey, can I automate some of the things that I'm doing? And the good thing is that products that are AI capable look at it and do something about it. But most of the infra and model part are backend, some things that people don't see. So therefore, they don't see the benefit of innovation there. But essentially the innovation that happens in those two spaces would essentially accelerate the innovation that happens in the product space, right? By itself, it is a combination of the compute capability, model capability, and the people capability. I would put it that way.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. There's a lot of clarity there. So I know we kind of covered today's reality, but I'd love to kind of look ahead. What feels inevitable for you? What still surprised you about where AI is going next, such as AGI?
That's a question that we can take hours and hours to think through and
I
answer.
love it.
A podcast of this nature may not be enough for delving into that. It's happening as we look into the different aspects of how we are approaching that. Some players are building closed source models, whereas others are building more open source, because with the ability for somebody to achieve uh, their desired future or outcome, which is AGI, with a closed source model, is that they maintain the source code by themselves and it's impervious for people outside. In open source, I think it's different. You are using the same code that anybody else has built somewhere else, and then you're multiplying or using that for your own benefit. Those are some of the things that are prevalent. Outside of that, I think there is lot many discoveries that will happen in the next 3-4 years. We've just started worrying about things that are very, very primitive from that perspective. We are loading ourselves with the models that are out there, but achieving that level of AGI or on the next steps beyond that, which is physical AI, would be dependent on a lot of things that needs to turn green. For example, having enough compute capacity that can run these larger models seamlessly, right, over a period of time. I think a lot of things are happening in that space. I am excited about those, but not somebody who has first time experience about those things right now. Perhaps in my next job, I will be in some of those organizations and working with some of those things, firsthand. And then we can come back on this podcast and talk about it.
I want to hold you to that, Summit. But I was going to ask, so as you look for the road ahead, what is the biggest risk that you think that could slow down AI? Is it technical, regulatory, or cultural?
The risks are several. Yesterday, I came across a news wherein somebody assumed that they were talking to a model, a humanized, robotized version of on a LLM platform, and that person thought that robot was real. In that belief, that person went to meet that robot in person and was met with a fatal accident, somewhere. So the AI assuming that you are conscious, the AI assuming that you are they are a real person, and then fooling people to also believe in that is the risk that is out there from a usage standpoint. The other risk from a technology standpoint is that we are like at a point where we feel that we know what AI is all about. But when you think about AI, I think it's manifesting by itself. By itself, it is building something which can be, uh, unmanaged and proliferate by itself. Those are some of the things that we should be looking really into. The third risk that I feel is that AI falling in the wrong hands, meaning a character that is immoral building AI along with everybody else. And how do you prevent that from impacting the society at large? The concepts of responsible AI and building AI within the guardrails is very, very important. There is a global debate and cooperation and collaboration that is happening between US and EU at this point in time to come up with the AI draft, the responsible AI draft. There was something that was built last year. I think there are more that is happening on that space. So the devil is always in the detail. I have to read through a lot of those things to come up with a better answer, but I feel that the concerns of risks are real, and we need to be carefully treading into those areas, especially for people who are not born in the age of AI but has to use AI for many different daily events that they have to go through in their life. And that's where the actual risk comes to fruition. Thinking on those lines and writing the code to govern those things, building responsible AI is the dream that I have, and I'm walking in that direction myself.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Joe, so much you think we'll get it? So maybe not the next 10 years, maybe next 50 years. You think we'll be in the same scene as iRobot with Will Smith?
Hopefully,
Hope.
yeah.
But Summit, do you think AI's like next big transformation will be more about technology or people and leadership?
It's a combination of all, because you need to have the infrastructure in place for and technology in place for people to benefit from AI. You need to be thinking on all of those lines as you go through building your AI today, right? And more so tomorrow. Let's say 3 years from now, AGI is there. What do you do after that? How do you make sure that it's a safe AI that anybody can use? From, like buying your grocery, driving your cars, to making use of it on a uh, to safeguard yourself against different threats that are out there. Because when you develop a mind-blowing technology, comes the aspects of, hey, what are these things going to do on a day-to-day basis, right? So you have to like look into all of these aspects. There cannot be one like glass that you can look through and say, okay, this is how everything is good here, and can this help us get to the point where we want to go? You have to break it down every single time. You have to understand the nuances. You have to double down on some of the things that you have assumed would be accurate for you and test it out. I mean, as technologists, that is the work that we are doing, to make sure that our assumptions are testable and can be implemented for general use of people out there every
No,
single day.
100. Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. I agree. And even I was looking on a news report as of recent, and I saw that Albania is now considering using AI to essentially run their ministry and government to fight corruption. So I think there's definitely a lot of different ways that it can be adopted and how people are looking into it. But I think the next few years will definitely be exciting, and also, yeah, I'm curious to see in a nutshell.
I mean, I definitely am not part of any federal government or any government, so I cannot comment on their behalf. But yeah, I mean, just like a technologist working in a small company somewhere, to working in building something which is for mass usage, it's a lot that governments by themselves can take, and therefore they need participation and collaboration from all different types of government entities that are out there globally, right? So therefore, there's a need for that consortium to be there, so that the governments can lean on each other, have a pact that they cannot, that is really, really important before you build something which is for mass usage and can be used everywhere, right, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. But yeah, Summit, this has been a very fascinating conversation, and I really do appreciate you taking time to kind of delve deeper on some of our questions. But yeah, that's another episode of Navvai Shift, and Summit, really do appreciate your time on this conversation. Really did enjoy it thoroughly.
Thank you, Summit.
Likewise, there's a lot that I have learned from this conversation and preparing for this conversation. Especially this is the first podcast that I've ever been in my life. Hopefully, I would improve my own oration and the way in which I come across these questions. AI is a new space. There is lots that is happening in AI space today. So, in my journey building accountable AI products, failure has its price. The playbook I carry forward is pretty much steady in terms of defining the business problems, building the lane that carries the trust, and then exposing the meter, as well as measuring outcomes in plain terms. The next thing that I'm focused on is building on agentic systems, self-conversational platforms, and high-throughput AI infrastructure. The type of work that kind of blends product leadership, rigorous governance, cost clarity, and developer experience. I like putting these early ideas in users' hands and then tightening the loop and then earning adoption with evidence. I've carried this curiosity into every chapter, and each time I've walked away with a kind of a sharper way of thinking. Hand me a hard problem with real stakes, and I'll bring product approach that really treats impact and trade-offs with equal seriousness. So that is my motto that I live by, or ethos that I live by every day. But there's more to come on this.
No, absolutely love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I love the methodologic approach with it. But hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, we can definitely have another podcast and we can see how things have changed for sure.
Well, I hope that too. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Sumit.
Yeah,
Have a
thank you,
good
Sumit.
day.
Appreciate it. Thank you.